When it comes to shopping for a motorcycle, most people consider value, what they get for the money paid for. Well, I not only consider the value, but I also consider the materials a motorcycle is made of. I also consider the practicality of the design. In this video, I will walk you through some of the pros and cons of materials that manufacturers choose to make bikes out of. The first one is low carbon steel. Low carbon steel is easy to identify because it is magnetic. All the rest of the materials will be not magnetic. Low carbon steel is highly formable. You can bend it and it's very ductile and it's got a lot of give, and you can make it into all kinds of shapes like this cargo bracket here, and you can weld it at home. They all have welds in them. Problem with low carbon steel is it needs to be painted because it rusts readily. If it's not painted, particularly here on the Pacific coast where it rains 9 months out of 12, it rusts right away. Another thing manufacturers do with low carbon steel is they try to put a chrome finish on it, and this chrome finish is only on the heat shield. This is not the actual exhaust. The actual exhaust is further down there. But either way, the heat shield is low carbon steel, the exhaust is low carbon steel, and low carbon steel is a practical material because you can bend it into all kinds of fancy shapes, but the chrome plating on it is only about as thick as paint, about 20 microns or 20 micrometers. And particularly on the exhaust, where it is subject to extreme heat and expansion and contraction, contraction as it cools off and heats up repeatedly during riding or between ridings. It's got microscopic hairline cracks in it called crazing, and water gets into it, and when it does so, that's what happens. It starts rusting right away, and then it drips down, and there, corrosion. The same thing happens to painted surfaces as well. They also they're also subject to crazing if they are close to heat sources, or if they are close to wheel, like this one, the rear wheel. They get sandblasted and they get stripped back down to the base metal because rain is not clean water. It's gritty and it basically gets sandblasted, typically here, or the swing arm here. Look at the swing arm here on this model here. There you can see this swing arm here. This whole rectangular shape beam is this is the whole swing arm, and it gets so much wheel wash and a splash of water from the rear wheel that basically, if the swing arm is made of low carbon steel, it gets any paint on it gets sandblasted right off. Same for low carbon components behind the front wheel. The second material that manufacturers choose is aluminum alloys. Aluminum alloys are not very ductile. They are fairly rigid and they break. They don't have a lot of give. They break definitely easier. They hold up alright and they are strong. Like this foot peg is made of cast aluminum. It is not magnetic. It's not pure aluminum, it's aluminum magnesium alloy. And even these fasteners here in it are made of some kind of aluminum alloy. They are not magnetic. And they work wonderfully well, but any kind of welding here done on it is very nearly impossible. You would need a MIG welder to fix these, and a MIG welder needs shielding gas, and it needs a welding booth to set up, and you need to preheat the materials and everything. So it's done in the factory fairly well, but fixing aluminum, cast aluminum items and cast aluminum control levers like a brake lever or the clutch lever on the other side is just extremely unsafe, so don't even think about it. The third material manufacturers choose for making bikes is stainless steel. Stainless steel is kind of soft steel, but doesn't rust, just like aluminum doesn't rust. And sometimes stainless steel is totally non-magnetic. Sometimes it has just a very little magnetism left in it. This exhaust is very slightly magnetic, but the amount of magnetism left in it is so little that it barely even holds the magnet up. Let's take a look at this one. That's more like it. It's a very little magnetism left in it. Whereas low carbon steel, the amount of force I need to pull the magnet off is way more on low carbon steel. So stainless steel, it made this color, as you can see it here, but that discoloration is due to changing the tempering on it due to the heat of the engine. So don't worry about the discoloration too much. It's not rusting. It's not going to rust anytime soon. The amount of stainless steel and low carbon steel right here behind the wheels might be something that you want to consider. In the splash area or wheel wash area, anything that's low carbon, this is how it's gonna look like. You can see that rust spotting there on this piece. There we go, and it's low carbon steel there. And anything inside that's rusty is low carbon, even though the header pipes here, these are totally non-magnetic stainless steel pipes. So stainless steel is also very ductile, and you can bend it into all kinds of fancy shapes, but usually not very strong, and they don't make structural steel or structural components out of it like a frame. And it needs a fancy setup for welding. It needs a shielding gas again, and it needs a special welding and everything. Otherwise, you can cut and slice and dice it fairly easily, but that's only half the job. You also need to put it together, so that's where welding would come in. So parts of the bike that you might want to consider for materials is the swing arm. Look at this nice box swing arm on it, and on this bike it's done out of cast aluminum with a big mud guard on the bike. Foot peg, aluminum. Foot peg bracket, low carbon steel. Subframe, low carbon steel. Probably that's why they fitted the bike with a big mud guard, so this one doesn't get sandblasted. Frame, cast aluminum. That's just a bolt. That's just a bolt. Very strongly magnetic there. And you can also see some of the iron content being bleached out here by repeated rains here. And low carbon steel there. Stainless steel on the exhaust. Other parts you might want to check is handlebar. On this one, low carbon steel. Triple clamp or fork bridge, cast aluminum there. On the lower one, stainless steel. And not stainless steel, low carbon steel. And you can also see rusting on it there. So these are the important parts of the bike. And there, another low carbon steel detail here. And these are also parts that I consider for practicality of design when it comes to shopping for motorcycle.